Our viewers can find information about QX Financial, the law offices of Phil Shekerlian, and links to any resources in the description below. As always, the information QX Financial provides on our channel is completely free. We don't spend any money promoting the channel. All that we ask is that if you find value, to please remember to like, subscribe, comment, and share our videos. This is super important in helping us grow our audience. All right, welcome back. I am joined again by Phil Shekerlian, estate planning attorney. In this video, we'll be discussing the topic of wills. So Phil, what is a will?
Yeah, thanks for having me back. A will is a document that can be used by people to direct where their assets go upon their death. It can also be used to say who will be in charge of dividing those assets up. Now, different types of wills. Each state has different requirements for wills. You know, some of them require witnesses, some of them require notaries, things along those lines, but the requirements are different from state to state, so that's really important to keep that in mind. And then on top of the formalities, there's different actually things that a will can do. So for instance, the most common type of will that most people have is what's called a pour-over will. And that is the will that is done in conjunction with a trust. And like we had said briefly in the last video, is that trusts do the same thing where they say where your assets go and who divides them up. They also avoid probate. Well, in case the trust was not properly funded and an asset was outside the trust at the time of your death, then that asset would still have to go through probate while all the other ones stay out of probate. Well, that asset that's in probate, we have this pour-over will. And what that does is it tells the probate court that the person wants their assets divided as it says in the trust. So it's kind of like a safety net, and that's why it's called a pour-over will. Anything that's out of the trust is poured into the will, and then that gets poured back into the trust by the probate court. Those are the most common, and really that's all that they do, is they say that everything should be divided as it says in my trust. Wills can be quite a bit more complex than that as well.
Sure.
Yeah, for sure. Wills can be devices to say sets up a tax plan at the time of your death. For instance, you could have a will that sets up something called a charitable remainder trust. That charitable remainder trust will help your estate get a tax deduction for setting up that trust, and then provide a stream of income for your heirs for a determined amount of time or for the rest of their lives. And then at the end of that time, then the charity gets what's left over that hasn't been spent by your heirs. So by doing that, you get a lot of tax benefits, your estate and your heirs. And you can set that up directly through your will. You could also have a will that sets up a trust. So rather than doing a trust now, your will can set up a trust upon death. And it can set up like a lifetime benefit trust or dynasty trust for your heirs to use for the rest of their lives to make sure they're financially secure. Or you could make it a specialized trust that allows for, say, for instance, you have family that is that's on disability benefits that can't inherit money. You can have your will set up a special trust for them where that money gets held in this trust and doesn't disqualify them from their benefits. So wills can be custom tailored to do a lot of different things.
I see. So in that last example, you're using the will to pass on money to loved ones without it counting as income for them. Am I understanding that right?
That is absolutely one way you can do it, yes.
Very cool.
Yes.
So do you need a will in any state in the United States?
So you should have you should have a will in any state that you live in, whether it's with a trust or without a trust. And then additionally, you should probably have a will in every state that you own real estate in. The reason being is that real estate is attached to the land. The state has ultimate control of whatever is attached to the land. Most of your other assets like bank accounts and things like that, those are now nationwide. That can be in any state. So if I have a will in California and I bank at a national bank, and my California will should control that because there's branches in California as well. But if I have real estate attached to the ground in another state, then my California will have no effect on that, for instance, Arizona real estate if I had property in Arizona. So if that property was not in my trust at the time of my death, I would need a pour over will in Arizona to govern that property.
I see. So that's when you would use a pour over will, or in that instance.
That's when you would use another state's pour over will. So you could technically have two in that sense. You have one in California, one in Arizona.
Okay, interesting.
Yes.
So you've mentioned a few things about wills. What are a few specific examples of what a will can actually do?
Yeah. So, I briefly mentioned this before, but a will, the main thing that people think about wills is it determines how to divide your assets upon death. If you want something specific to go to a specific person, you can say that. You can put limitations on when they get it, how they have access to it, things along those lines. And you can change what the law says happens if you don't have a will. So the law says it has something called intestate succession. It says that if you don't have any documents in place, whether it be a will or a trust, then your kids will be the first in line to inherit your assets. And your kids will split those assets equally among all your kids. Well, if you don't have kids, then it might be your grandkids or great-grandkids. But if you don't have any kids, grandkids, great-grandkids, then that goes up to your parents. And then if you don't have any parents that are alive, then it goes down to your siblings, and then down to their kids, great-grandkids, and so on. And then up to your grandparents and down to their kids, which would be your aunts and uncles. And then it just keeps going along that line until there's a living level of heirs, and those heirs split it equally.
I see. So that's kind of the default succession right there. And then
exactly.
You can tailor it as you please, as long as you get the will done.
Yep. So if you don't like that, then you do the will or the trust to avoid how that says that the assets get passed along.
Okay, very cool.
Yeah. And then another important one is determine who's going to be in charge of doing that division. If you have just a will and no trust, and that those assets have to go through probate, you need somebody to be the executor of your will or the personal representative of your estate. And that person is going to have to be the one that goes to court and files the paperwork and deals with the judge and does that over and over again until the judge approves a final distribution of all the assets. That person will also have to pay off any creditors or bills owed on behalf of your estate, gather any money, sell any assets that need to be sold. There's a whole lot of responsibility that comes with being a personal representative or executor, and you can determine who in your will would be best suited to do that. You want to pick somebody, one that's a little bit financially savvy and is good with dealing with banks and judges and things. Also somebody that you completely trust that isn't going to run away with the money or try to cheat your heirs out of what they're entitled to.
Right. It's an important responsibility.
Absolutely. Another thing that a will can do is if you do not have a will or a trust that waives bond, your personal representative is going to have to pay for a bond, which is an insurance policy, that says that they are not going to run off with the money that they have control of, and that they're actually going to be responsible and divided among the heirs. Mm-hmm. The problem is those bonds can get quite costly, anywhere from a few $100s up to a couple $1,000s. And you really want to preserve everything that you have for your family and not give it to another entity or the government or whatever the case may be.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
So you've mentioned a few things of what a will can do. What are a few examples of things that a will doesn't do for our viewers?
So for one is a will does not avoid the probate process. Remember I had said that probate process can take months to years and cost tens of thousands of dollars. But even if you have the best drafted will out there, no matter what type of will or what state it's in, well, let me rephrase that. It doesn't matter what state it's in, but here in California, it will not avoid probate. The only thing that will avoid probate in a lot of states is a trust. So that's why you want to have the will in conjunction with the trust.
Right.
And then additionally, a will does not plan for estate taxes. It does not allow your family to minimize the amount of taxes that they're going to have to pay on your estate if you have a taxable estate. It does actually reach forward and allows you a little bit to control from the grave. I had mentioned, I don't remember if it was this video or the last video, that that you could set up a trust through your will. It was this video. You could set up a trust through your will to govern how your heirs control or can have the assets. So if you have a child and you want them to be able to, and you're leaving them money, you want to be able to let them have money a little bit at a time rather than all at once, you can do that. You can say age 20, they get, 10% of the money. Age 25, they get 30% of the money, and so on. So it actually allows you to kind of control your assets from the grave.
Right. And it prevents, when somebody gets a large sum of money, especially at a young age, let's just say it's a little bit better to get some of it at a time rather than all at once in a lot of cases. So
Absolutely. We see all the time in the news, we'll refer to them as trust fund babies that get quite a lot of money and abuse it and become addicts, and you don't want that to happen to your kids. You don't want to be the person to enable that.
right. It's a lot of pressure for a young person to get, inherit that kind of money. So
Absolutely.
yeah. So Phil, I think there's some misconceptions out there that people can go online to a legal document prep site and get their will done there. Why might that not be a good idea?
Yeah, I see that quite often, actually. It's get clients coming in that have done that, and we end up having to essentially redo everything that was done on there. There's a couple of reasons. One is, if you're talking about doing a trust, one of the things I'd mentioned is a trust needs to be funded, and those sites don't help you fund your trust. But if you're talking about a will or any other type of document, the value in hiring an attorney to help you with your estate plan is not in the preparation of the documents. That's real easy. There's actually tons of software companies out there that a lot of attorneys use to prepare the documents as well. We actually use our own documents that we create for the client every time. But a lot of really good attorneys out there actually use a document prep site. It's because preparation of the documents is not the difficult part. The difficult part is understanding what the client wants and what the ramifications of each of their decisions are. And so if a client if they go onto one of those doc prep sites, the site will ask them a question and say, do you want this choice or this choice? And then the client doesn't understand all the ramifications behind each of those choices because they're not an attorney. They don't know that there could be tax concerns or asset protection concerns behind that. And all they see is the face value of that question is, okay, do I want my stuff to go here or do I want my stuff to go there? Mm-hmm. And so they pick what they think is the correct one. They don't know what's behind that. So a lot of times I have a client bring one into me and they say, oh yeah, I did this, this, and this. And I say, okay, but what this says is that this is going to happen. And as a result of that happening, this, and this happens. Is that what you want? And a lot of times the client says, well, no, they never asked me those questions. I had no idea. And so that's why it's not a good idea to go and do it yourself unless you understand all of the consequences of each choice you make on those document websites.
Right. No, that makes a ton of sense. We can relate to that. I think finance industry as well as your industry.
Absolutely.
There's plenty of companies out there that can, do the compiling of documents and print out spreadsheets, right? And they're good software.
Absolutely.
But when it comes to that personal touch needed, especially as an attorney, you can't just click yes and click no and select A, B, and C and think you're going to have the right thing. So that's a really good point.
Absolutely. And not only is it important not use a document prep site, but to go to licensed attorney. A lot of people will also use paralegals, but paralegals can't do any more than a doc prep site is, and that's prepare the documents. Mm-hmm. You make a choice with a paralegal, they can't tell you which choice, what the difference is in the two choices, because that would be legal advice, which can only be done by an attorney. So it's important to go to an attorney that does estate planning, but not only that, one that does tax planning and asset protection as well, so that they know what all the ramifications are of each of the choices.
All right. Very cool. Did we miss anything on wills, Phil, that you wanted to add?
No, I think that's it. Like I said, the will is typically the backup document to the trust. The trust is the most important one that you're going to have for finances. And you guys will have to stay tuned for the next video to learn more about trusts.
Awesome. Great cliffhanger. All right. Once again, thank you for joining us, Phil, and sharing this valuable information with our audience.
Thank you for having me.
Next up, we'll be covering trusts in greater detail. Please don't forget to like, comment, share, and subscribe, and we'll see you next time. The commentary provided in this video is for informational and educational purposes only. No advice, offer, or solicitation of any kind, expressed or implied, is being given. The views and opinions expressed do not necessarily represent the views and opinions of QX Financial, any subsidiaries, or associates thereof. When considering making any changes to your situation, you should consult a competent licensed professional. All rights reserved. Copyright September 17th, 2020.
This information is not intended and should not be taken as legal advice for any particular set of facts or circumstances. You should contact an attorney directly for advice with specific legal problems. None of this information creates an attorney-client relationship with the law offices of Phil Shekerlian.